Kevin always thought he had the makings of a photographer, so when he saw the lamps at the garage sale, how could he resist? These weren't the kind of lamps you found on your bedside table. These were professional studio-grade photographer's lamps. They would take his photography to the next level, or so he thought. For the low price of $200, Kevin loaded the lamps into the back of his car and drove home. It seemed like a morning well spent. He never would have imagined that because of this decision, within 6 months, he'd be dead. Kevin had always been on the shyer side, socially anxious, awkward, you might even say lonely. He just didn't know how to talk to people, but maybe photography would be a way in. If he could only learn how to take beautiful pictures, he'd be an asset to somebody, anybody. These thoughts were on his mind as he returned home and began setting up the lamps in his basement. He plugged them in and flicked the switch. An impressive glare cut through the gloom of his basement. A mess of strange shapes and shadow were projected against the bare brick wall. Perhaps he needed to clean the bulbs, he thought. That's what you get for saving money and buying secondhand. But it was a start, at least. As much as the strange shapes of the shadows enraptured him, he knew that some professional lights alone wouldn't turn his basement into a photography studio. The next day, he bought a white canvas and placed it in front of his wall. It was the perfect backdrop for taking much more professional photos. But when he stepped back to take a proper look, he almost had a heart attack. The silhouette of a woman seemed to be cast against the canvas. She was in a strained pose that seemed designed to show off her shadowy curves. Was it some trick of the light, or was he going crazy? Kevin stepped back again to try to get a better look, but no. As sure as he was about anything in the world, he was sure that that was the shadow of a woman. Maybe it was still some result of camera positioning. He tried to move the lamps around, but the woman remained, still holding that exact same alluring pose. At the time, it felt like the only solution was to leave the basement and simply avoid trying to accept all the things this implied about his new reality. But the next day, when curiosity got the better of him, he walked back down the basement stairs and saw her there. That silhouette, that shadow projected against the canvas, that beautiful impossibility. And strangely, around her, he didn't feel so awkward. He didn't feel so alone. No part of him wanted to turn off the lamps, to make her disappear. The thought seemed insane to him. Instead, every morning he'd come downstairs into the basement and spend a few hours with the shadow. He'd talk to her, share his frustrations, his secrets. It didn't even strike him as odd until a month was nearly up. Then, things began to change. He was astonished to find that during his otherwise immutably consistent morning schedule, the shadow had begun to move. She twisted and contorted into strange poses as though she was in the middle of a photo shoot. Was she posing for him, inviting him to capture her? He took shot after shot as she posed for hours on end. It was exhilarating, but he still had no concept of just how much was to come. Because in the days that followed her first strange, stilted movements, she developed a full range of motion, acting out strange scenarios like a shadowy one-woman show. She seemed to speak to people who weren't there, walk around, partake in activities with invisible objects. Kevin was fascinated, entranced. It was like his own personal soap opera playing out in his basement, watching this shadow woman live out her solitary shadow life. He couldn't help but see himself and his own struggles to connect, reflected back from her. He knew it sounded sad, maybe even delusional, but it was almost like he knew her better than he knew anyone else, even though they'd never spoken or truly interacted. As the months marched on, he felt even closer to her, so invested in her strange, impossible life, playing out entirely on the canvas in his basement. He was even astonished to see she pulled out a camera now and then, taking photos of her own. It was like the two of them were meant to be together, soulmates separated by a rogue layer of reality. Everything changed one morning when he entered the basement and saw that his dear shadow woman wasn't alone. There was another figure with her, huge and masculine, with large horns protruding from his head. The figure made him uneasy, but the shadow woman didn't seem to share his fear. They seemed to talk and laugh and dance and walk hand in hand together. Kevin couldn't help but feel a little betrayed. But this had all become such a huge part of his life now. He couldn't go back. He couldn't just stop watching. Though maybe if he did, he would have survived. In the weeks that followed, he saw things sour in the murk of his basement. Other shadow men appeared, with their horns and their long fingers. They were all over the Shadow Woman with their grasping, busy hands. It made Kevin sick. One day he realized that this was so much more sinister than he'd ever imagined. The morning that Kevin died, when he entered the basement, he saw the horned shadow men attacking the Shadow Woman he'd grown so close to. Surrounding her, their long, jagged shapes struck at the woman. She couldn't stop them. The sight of it made Kevin's head spin. He staggered back toward the stairs, one hand gripping the railing. But before he could run out of the basement, he saw the heads of the horned men all turn toward him. It was the first time anything in the shadows had directly acknowledged him, and now they couldn't get their eyes off him. Kevin had no close friends, and he wasn't close to his neighbors either. That's why, as the horned men descended upon him, dragging him back down the basement stairs, their claws sinking into his skin, no one heard him scream. No one was ever going to help. What's the most you ever lost at a garage sale? If you happen to get a real steal of a deal on a couple of photography lamps, then you might just lose your sanity and then your life. Such is the way of SCP-205, also known as the Shadow Lamps. In a colloquial sense, these lamps appear to be haunted, bearing the indelible psychic impression of the months leading up to an unfortunate woman's gruesome death. In order to keep the world safe from some of this anomaly's most deleterious effects, we need to understand as best we can how it works. We also need to discover how the Foundation might hope to contain it, and what exactly happened to the woman whose shadow is forced to act out her terrible demise again and again and again. The two lamps, referred to in the official files as SCP-205-1 and SCP-205-2, are completely identical, even down to their serial numbers. When both are turned on and power is supplied, the two lamps project an anomalous light capable of passing through any object except a large, plain white surface, like a photographer's screen or even a simple white wall. And in the beginning, the image is invariably the same: the shadowed silhouette of a woman, often making provocative poses. This highly detailed shadow puppet will then proceed to enter a 6-month cycle, representing the aforementioned last 6 months of a presumably real woman's life. And these cycles always end in a particularly gruesome fashion at the end of April and October. The static image of the Shadow Woman in a provocative pose only remains that way for the first month, perhaps representing a pose that the flesh and blood equivalent truly struck during her likely career as a model while alive. During the last week of that first month, the Shadow Woman will begin to move slightly, looking as though she's uncomfortably shifting her weight from foot to foot, a nervous tic. As the first calendar month ends, the Shadow Woman will spend 8 hours executing a series of poses, as though acting out an invisible photo shoot, before being unlocked from her stasis and spending the next 5 months moving constantly. It will appear almost like the world's most committed mime performance. The shadow goes about the daily life of the woman, who appeared to have been both a model and a photographer. Most objects she interacts with won't also appear in the shadow, but a few of the most important ones, such as her camera, seem to be the exception. From what we can extrapolate from her mimed behavior, it seems that the woman had a thriving social life, full of relatively superficial relationships, hiding a deep well of loneliness underneath. In the first 5 months, she has only one intimate interaction, a striking example of just how disconnected from everyone else this woman truly was. And it was exactly this kind of loneliness and vulnerability that seemed to make her the target. During April and October, new figures begin to enter the fray for the first time. These are the horned figures, with their almost comically exaggerated male physiques. There's always just one at first, interacting cordially with the woman at what might be a party or other public social event. Nothing about the woman's body language seems to indicate she's nervous around this figure, implying that perhaps she can't see everything that we see. Then begins a relationship between the horned shadow and the woman, as he seems to court her, taking her on dates, wining and dining her, and engaging in, well, let's just say more intimate encounters. While I have your undivided attention, if you want to take your understanding of the anomalous to the next level, I highly recommend that you check out the DrBob Patreon. For a small sum, you not only support my continued investigations here on this channel, but you can also access exclusive material like thumbnail concept sketches and uncensored versions of the episodes that we can't show here on YouTube. And given some of the truly dark places that this anomaly goes, you're going to want to sign up and find out the extremely YouTube-unfriendly truth. At some point, the horned figure will introduce the woman to others of its kind, where, once again, she won't show any sign of distress. These others will hang around the two of them at all times from this time onwards, up until the point where, invariably, she takes a photo of the horned figures with her Polaroid camera. Sometime after this, the Shadow Woman will develop the photo. At this point, the moment she looks at the photograph, she will seem to exclaim in horror and attempt to run away, shutting herself away behind a locked door. What follows is nothing short of an abject nightmare. The horned men will return and relentlessly torment the Shadow Woman for the last week of April or October. Even after their attacks appear to have killed her, they continue attacking without pause, showing no shame, guilt, or remorse. And if anyone enters the vicinity during this savage and terrifying period, they're likely to be the next target. This will always lead to a savage and painful death for the intruder, as well as the Shadow Woman, as the horned Shadow Men descend upon them with relentless, insatiable violence. On the last day of the cycle, before everything renews, the shadows of the horned men will grow larger, as though they're getting closer to the light source. They will eventually choke out the light of SCP-205 in darkness, causing the lamps to fail, no matter what procedures have been put in place to keep them working. This is the most dangerous time of all to be in the presence of SCP-205 when the power of the shadows is truly absolute. But if you're still there at this point, I'm afraid it's probably already too late. Given the clear danger presented by this anomaly, and the fact it's frankly just plain frightening and disturbing, Foundation personnel have taken the utmost caution in devising containment methods. 205 has been given the containment class Euclid, and for now, they're both being kept in Chamber 52 of Site 23, where they're supplied power and allowed to play out their grim tale on the stark white wall for anyone in the adjoining test chamber to see. Maintenance staff are kept close to hand, along with a series of replacement parts such as transformers or bulbs if either of the lamps break or begin to malfunction. Though in the closing stages of the process, taking place in April and October every year, all maintenance is suspended, along with permission for any research staff or guards to enter the chamber. If the chamber goes fully dark at any point during this process, nobody is allowed to enter, and anyone who somehow does is to be considered lost. The chamber must be left in total darkness for at least 30 days before any security personnel are permitted to enter, purely as a safety precaution. Because the test chamber being in a state of total darkness is considered the absolute apex of danger that this anomaly poses, when maintenance is being performed, it's critical that only one of the lamps is ever turned off at a time. If both are ever accidentally turned off, the same procedure applies. No one is permitted to enter the chamber for 30 days. Because of the possible danger that SCP-205 presents to Foundation staff, the research into its nature and abilities will only continue pending review from the O5 Council. Once permission is granted to cease the investigations, the power from the lamps will be cut off. After that 30-day waiting period, they will be taken and put into permanent storage, never to be turned on again. At a point, the potential risks go beyond what we have to gain. The extent of the risk became clear during what is now known as Incident 205-76B, when one of the bulbs in the lamps blew out during late October. A junior researcher opened the door to Chamber 52, hoping to enter and switch the bulb while the horned men were attacking the eternally doomed Shadow Woman. However, the second the door opened, it was like something in the atmosphere changed. They stopped, and all of the horned shadow figures seemed to look up and turn their faceless gazes towards the researcher. He felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the pure malice in their collective intent had wafted across the room like a bad smell. Wisely, before any of the shadows could move, and believe me when I say they can move a lot faster than you think, he shot back out of the room and slammed the door behind him. At first, his superiors accused him of insubordination for refusing to go back inside, before seeing the staring, horned figures through the observation window. They just waited there and stared for 3 whole hours, perhaps hoping that someone would step back inside. They seemingly got bored and returned to attacking the female shadow. After this, there were several other incidents of technical failures in the later stages of the 205 cycles. I've got a strong suspicion that after that first incident, it represents a concerted effort from the horned figures to lure Foundation staff inside. We still don't really know who exactly these entities are, and exploring deeper to find out would risk putting others in danger of death. All we can extrapolate from the tragic tale of a woman whose name we will never know is that, at first, they can seem human, perhaps even charming. But as time passes, you'll begin to see them for who or what they really are, until a glance at a photograph reveals that everything you know is wrong. But by then, it's always already too late, isn't it? To support my continued mission here at DrBob, be sure to give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you haven't, and let me know what other anomalies you'd like me to cover down in the comments. In the meantime, for more horrors, check out SCP-747, Children and Dolls.